Okay, we are broadcasting live. This is an informal discussion on teaching, and particularly I had an interest of talking and sharing about what I'm planning on doing next semester. This is part of the TIL community, the Teachers for Interactive Language Learning community, which is a Google Plus community that I started a couple years ago, and periodically have online discussions talking about basically anything related to TESOL, teaching English to students of other languages. And looks like we have Anthony here. Hello, Anthony.
Hello.
And so I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Maybe we can start first, if you don't mind introducing yourself, maybe describing a little bit of the context with which you come from and
Sure.
What you're currently doing.
Okay. So this is the first time I'm using Google Hangout, so it's a bit of an experience, an experiment for me. At the moment, I'm in Buenos Aires, where I teach English as a foreign language. I'm working for International House, a global company that I've been working for a couple of years now. Before here, I was based in the UK, teaching English there with International House and at Newcastle University. And before that, I taught with various companies in Poland and Spain and Germany. And at the moment, I'm teaching English as a foreign language in the context mainly of older teens, young adults who want to pass Cambridge exams such as the Cambridge Advance and Proficiency.
Okay, so it's a private school then? It's a private school that you work at primarily?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's a private language institute.
Okay, great, excellent. Okay, are you currently doing anything with technology with regard to the classes that you teach and sharing anything that you do online? Is there anything that you're currently doing?
Unfortunately, the school that I work at basically has no technology. And but fortunately, the teachers this year are quite big on technology. So we've been pushing the school to try and invest a little bit in technology. And they've been a bit reluctant, but getting somewhere with it. So we're hopefully in the sort of next few weeks and months, the school might get some kind of technology into the classroom. In the meantime, the other teachers and I were sort of trying to explore how we could either use bring your own device or getting the learners to use technology outside of the classroom and then report back on it inside the classroom. And we're actually going to have a training session this Friday about flipped learning and see what we can do there. One teacher's already went ahead and is using wikis, so like blogs, to get learners using a bit of technology outside the classroom. I want to try and get my learners doing a bit of voice recording on there, because they've all got mobile phones that can voice record. So I want them to do a bit of voice recording outside the classroom or possibly inside the classroom.
Great, that sounds interesting. So I guess then the school doesn't have a policy, or I should say then the teachers have the freedom to incorporate any technologies they feel is necessary, as opposed to the institution kind of dictating or having their own type of teachers must use. So you have that freedom, it sounds like.
Yeah. I think that's a very positive way of looking at it, that we have that freedom. I looked at it more like we have that lack of resource, but yeah, that is it.
And it kind of goes both ways, because I've also seen or been in situations where, the institution might have like let's say a Moodle or some sort of management system that forces the teacher. So there could be limitations there as well. It just depends on, I guess, the situation.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds interesting. The context that I come from, I teach pre-service English language educators. So I teach in a BA that prepares teachers in Mexico. I'm working in Mexico, in Aguascalientes. And I teach primarily writing courses to teachers who are studying a BA to become English teachers. So,
all right.
Last semester I taught a thesis seminar course, which is an 8-semester course kind of that where students do a research project and write a thesis based on their project. And
Did you just say 8 semesters?
I'm sorry?
Did you just say it lasts 8 semesters?
I know, I'm sorry, 1 semester. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
right,
a
okay.
course. And yeah, no, that would be an undertaking. But yeah, this is a semester course, and it's their 8th semester, so it's their last semester of study before they graduate. So it's one of the courses that they have to take their last year, the last semester, and I taught that this past semester, and I also teach composition course, which is depending on the semester, anywhere from the 3rd to the 5th semester course, and it's basically primarily academic writing, but there is some creative writing involved where students are writing poetry and that type of thing. Next semester, which is kind of what I wanted to talk about today, a little bit about what I'm doing, is I'm teaching an academic writing course, which is a 7-semester course that's very much linked to the 8th semester thesis seminar course. And I've been using a lot of technology over the years, and that's something that I wanted to share with everyone, basically what I'm doing next semester, to see if there might be opportunities for some of my students to interact with other students. That's kind of the one piece that's missing as far as what I'm doing. I do a lot of online work with my students, but I would like to get my students more involved in interacting with other students or just other individuals outside the course. So that's kind of the goal that I'm trying to achieve next semester. And again, the technology seemed to be in place, but I just haven't quite gone the next step so that my students have those opportunities to interact. I've had some experiences with this, but it's not, in my opinion, it's just not enough. I'd like to get my students kind of out of the context of their own classroom and begin interacting a little bit more, especially since they're going to be teachers. I think it's important that they have that experience and hopefully find opportunities themselves when they get into the field.
Okay. So, what technology do you already have in place that you mentioned? Like you said, there's already technology in place, but you haven't went that one next step. So what are they using?
Okay, so I think I'll go ahead and share my screen, and and obviously too, if you have anything too that you want to share your screen as well, or if you want to discuss something that you're doing as well, that'd be great. Last semester. Can you see my screen?
I certainly can, yes.
Okay, refresh here. Looks like this. Okay, there. That should look a little bit better there. Semester with my students, and last semester I taught composition. This was a 4th semester course, and I also taught thesis seminar. So both of my courses that I taught last semester, I set up using Google Sites. And you can kind of see here. I won't go through the whole thing, but basically I have class announcements here where I share information to the whole group. I tend to share that or post those messages. Our students were required to do a weekly reflection, so I also set up a weekly reflection page as well. And here, students share the reflections by posting, and hope it's a little bit slow here. Hopefully this will. Yeah, so here students were asked to post here, so they would post the reflections here, and obviously because all of this is open, the idea being that their whole reflection process and learning process is open, again in hopes that they start collaborating, and that they get used to sharing their work and their reflections openly online. And
so they could comment on each other's reflections.
They could. A lot of the things that I have done with technology, it seems like I could always do more, or the students could always do more, but it seems to be, as you know, a fine line between trying to accomplish the goals of the course. I have 16 weeks that I have to work within. So, there is a limit, I think, as far as time and investment goes. What students could certainly students could reflect and post and respond to each other's posts and reflections. For this particular course, didn't go quite that far, but as you can see here, the students were uploading their reflections, and hopefully they were at least reading the other reflections of their peers. So whether or not they responded, they would get some benefit still by just looking at the reflections of their class. So that was one aspect. Share their projects. So this course, again, is a research course where they're asked to build up a theory, write up and investigate and develop a theoretical framework, and then conduct their own research. All right. So each of the students had a link, or I created a link to their document, and this semester was the first semester I used OneDrive. I've used Google Docs in the past, but it seems that the OneDrive and Word Online has been maturing to a point that I wanted to try it out this semester, which I did. And you can see here all the students. This is just one student, but the students were sharing their work openly through these documents. Now, all of these documents were shared with me, so I could also go in and edit and make comments, which I did throughout the semester as we both kind of worked together and as they developed their document. So the students met with me face-to-face, because these courses are all face-to-face that I teach at the university, but what I'm showing here is just kind of to complement basically what we're doing face-to-face. So I meet with my students, or I met with them once a week for half an hour, where we went over not only their reflections but also their progress and the comments that I left here. So Word Online, but also face-to-face as we discussed their projects. So I found this useful, and the way that we worked was very similar to the way I've worked with Google Docs, in that students could email me at any time, really, to ask for feedback if they wanted to. There were periodic dates throughout the semester where I would go in and look at everyone's work. But typically, from a week-to-week basis, I wouldn't go in to look at everything unless they ask for it. So, for example, the literature review, students would typically have 1 month to finish the literature review. So after the month, I would go and look and evaluate their progress at that point.
And did students know that you were going to do that?
I'm sorry?
Did students know that you were going to do that? Did they know that you'd planned at this point to go in and check everyone's work?
Yes, good point. At the kind of an orientation, and obviously the goals of the course, and part of that orientation included files, or files, I guess, that pertain to the course, and one of them was a schedule. So here, the students were given the schedule to work from, so they knew from day one the milestones that they needed to complete. So, for example, the literature needed to be completed by the 27th of February, and so on, so that they knew knew from the very beginning, when I would go in and look at everyone's work. So in this case, I would go in and look at the literature review at the end of February. I would go in and probably at the end of April look at their data collection. And again, I'm meeting with the students throughout the semester, so it's not like they're on their own at all. We're talking about their progress throughout. But the main times that I would go in and look at everyone's work would be maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5 times throughout the semester during these important milestones. But obviously, if the students wanted me to look at their work at any time, they could email, which they did, most of them. They would email me, and I would go in and leave comments, questions as comments, and I would just respond to comments. And the Word Online is really matured to a point that it's basically has the same functionality as Google Docs. In fact, there are certain aspects, I think, just from an editing standpoint, that I think most students, and I know I do, feel more comfortable working in Word Online. Yeah, so that's basically what this, what we were doing in this particular course. And you know, with composition, it's a little bit different. There's not a research component, but there is obviously a lot of writing. So there are some things that were a little bit different, but also the same with regard to this class in comparison with the thesis seminar course. If you look at the Google Sites page, if it opens, there's still a class announcements page, but there wasn't a reflection due. But I did have a page for students' documents, and this process was very similar to the went ahead and started preparing for next semester, because at this point I was thinking of using this last semester. This was that I used the students. Now in this case, students also had a blog. So this first link was to the Word document. So this would be Annie's Word document, and this is just basically where the student worked, and we collaborated and developed all of the different writing products that were due for the course. And then each student also had a personal blog. So the idea was that we would work dates for particular writing products where that would be conducted in Word Online, and then once they felt comfortable with their final product, then they would move it over to their own personal blog. And so most of the cases, in fact, invariably, all the students, when they enter this course, they're just beginning to use a blog and begin getting used to sharing their work openly online. So a lot of time is spent in this particular course kind of guiding them through the process, getting them used to using it, and talking in terms of how you share information online in this particular context, in a business or a professional context, as opposed to maybe an informal context in Facebook, for example, where they're very comfortable. But sharing this idea of posting what they have completed, whether it's in through their coursework that they complete in the BA, or if it's just anything else that they feel like sharing from a professional standpoint, that they start using these spaces. And most students use the blog, or actually Blogger, instead of WordPress, just for the ease. I think it's a little bit more user friendly. They had the option of choosing, but most of them chose Blogger. Okay. So yeah, this particular course, this is what I was using. And again, the rest of this information is just information that relates to each of the units and the rubrics that were used and so on. So the idea here is basically just to provide an online space where students have access to information that's being discussed face-to-face, because almost all of my students are language learners themselves. Mm-hmm. And although the courses are conducted in English, I think that this complements it well for them. It's a place that they can go back to, and if they need further, clarification, that they can go through and get that information. So that's basically what I was doing at this past semester. Now, again, composition, I some time ago started a wiki space, and I'm kind of going back and forth between using Google Sites or the wiki, and I'm almost thinking I might want to go back to the wiki, basically doing the same thing that that I was doing here in Google Sites. But yeah, I'm still not really sure exactly which I'll do. But basically, the idea is going to be the same: is to have one space where they can have access to the content that we're working on in class, and the second component of Word or Microsoft Word Online, where they actually do the work and we collaborate online. And this is kind of where I would also like to take it to the next level, because all of this information is being shared openly online. Mm-hmm. The idea is to find opportunities to work with other teachers who have students where, you know, there's some opportunities to collaborate, whether that's asynchronous through just going in and reading and commenting and interacting that way asynchronously, or even synchronously if schedules permit, doing something like some sort of live online class, or, you know, that type of thing. But that's kind of the purpose or the reasoning behind me trying to provide all this information online. At least that's one reason for doing that. So that's kind of where I'm at currently with what I've been working on. And one of the reasons why I started this community, the teachers, let me go ahead and open up the community here. Teachers for Interactive Language Learning community. I'm not sure, Anthony, if I think did you join this?
I don't know. I need to, I'll tell you what, I'm going to type it in now.
Okay. But I wasn't sure. I know we've been interacting through Google+, but sometimes I lose track if we're communicating within the community or not. And it doesn't matter, you know, if you are in the community or not. But this is the community that oftentimes I'll have my students interact online. But obviously there are other members that are sharing information, and so this is kind of another component that I might bring into the class. Another thing that I really want to try to do next semester with my group is to find a way to, either through Google Plus communities, I was even thinking about maybe Twitter. I don't want to introduce too many technologies to my students for fear they may just, you know, I usually am pushing the number of technologies as it is. But I want to try to find a way that I can interact in class in real time, kind of like a Twitter activity where we can maintain some sort of back channel, so that when we're working in class, I'm discussing something, or we're doing some sort of activity, that we can bring in this back channel or Twitter-like discussion that would complement kind of what we're doing. And I see a lot of opportunities there, but I'm still trying to figure out the best way to do that.
I know of a piece of software that you can use. The only problem is I can't remember what it's called right now. But when I go into work later on, I'll ask a colleague, and then I'll send you the name of it. Because there is something that exists. I know people who have used it, and it's basically for that. Instead of using Twitter, using this platform so that learners can just simply go there and then say what they want to say that they maybe don't want to say out loud in front of everyone. And to the best of my memory, it's not a platform where you have to sign up like with Twitter and make an account and everything. It's just for educational purposes. But I can't remember the name of it right now. But I'll find out for you, okay?
That would be perfect. In fact, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Something that they don't have to create another password or another account, and preferably embeddable, if it can be embedded into a wiki or Google Sites, where that I can kind of bring it into our own environment. But even if that's not possible, that's fine too. Even if it's an external page, because we have in our classrooms, we have computers and we have big screen TVs. So we have a way that we basically use those as in place of a chalkboard or a whiteboard, a blackboard, whatever you're going to call it. But we have monitors there that would be ideal for setting up a back channel, and where students could go in and share their ideas. And whether it's associated, in fact, it would be better, I think, not having their names associated to their own comments, making it anonymous so that they are free to share whatever thoughts and opinions that they wish without being recognized.
Yeah, yeah. With regards to getting your learners talking to other learners, my teaching context, I don't teach anyone who that would be appropriate with. They're all either young adults or teens, and not university students, I'm afraid. But online on Google Plus, I've only been using it for about a week. I've come across a couple of people who teach in Korea, and they seem to largely teach university students, from what I can gather. So that might be a point of call.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily. I'm not even necessarily looking for university students. It doesn't matter if there's the basic idea is that it needs to be some way related to reading and writing, I think, and perhaps, well, I don't know, if it's done asynchronously, the main thing is that they're writing and sharing ideas about their writing and discussing that. So for me personally, it's not necessary that they interact only with university students. If other students who are studying general English, that they're working on their writing skills and they want to share with someone else, that type of thing, I think that there's still opportunities there. Many years ago, we used to do language exchanges, which were basically using Skype in real time to have these exchanges, these discussions with different universities in the United States. So we would set up an hour where both groups would meet online, and for half an hour we would speak English, and the other half we would speak Spanish. So obviously, nice. Our learners would be learning English, and their learners would be learning Spanish. So we would do an exchange of that sort. And we, at first, we were organizing groups where both groups were university students. But it came to a point too where we had groups that were some were high school students in the U.S. working with our college students. Some groups in our context weren't learning English, general English. They were learning, for example, business English, or they were learning, different types of English for specific purposes with their general English courses. And it still worked as long as both groups had an idea of the objectives that both groups were looking for. There were opportunities there to make it work. And I kind of see parallels with this particular context, even though it's not a language exchange per se, speaking wise, but writing wise, I think it's kind of the same idea, where as long as both groups are kind of on the same page, and that I still think there's potential for some exchanges, some learning opportunities. And again, this doesn't have to be a very time-consuming component, right? I mean, it doesn't have to. I'm just thinking just one or two opportunities throughout the semester to share or comment or read someone else's work and comment on it, I think would be a good thing. So I'm not looking for major investment as far as this exchange goes, but I think just even one experience would be nice to have for those students. And occasionally, for example, in my composition course, we always finish with a poetry reading, because they spend a lot of time writing poetry or writing poems. And so we always conclude by doing a Google Plus Hangout at the end of the semester, where they are sharing their 4 different types of poems that they have written. And obviously this is open, so sometimes we do get teachers in the Hangout, just as we were here today. And those have always been wonderful experiences, because teachers then provide feedback to my students, and nothing's planned. There's nothing, it's just very, it just emerges. And when it does work, when it does happen, it's usually a very good experience. So
that makes it a very authentic, authentic, interactive experience.
And you'd be surprised how the students react when there's it's not just their teacher, it's not just me there giving them feedback, really makes a big difference. And those are the moments that that I've had that I want to try to find or do more of, because I've just seen the reaction of my students when that works, when it happens. So that's really the purpose of why I even set up this community, why I even conduct some of these hangouts, is so that we can find opportunities from other teachers and other contexts, where we can find opportunities to bring our students together and have these opportunities to work together. So, but yeah,
Okay.
do you find in your own experience, or if you have other teachers too, that that you want, that you see some opportunities there, that's something that I would like to discuss more, and hopefully we can provide these opportunities.
Nice. We've got a teachers meeting on Friday, so this is something I can take to the meeting and see how teachers react, see if anyone's interested. So nice.
Yeah, and
I have a
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Anthony.
I have a question for you about. So you showed me before that you got the students to upload their work using OneDrive, Word Online. And one of the issues I've got where I'm working at the moment with writing is I said a piece of writing, we look at it in class, and then students have to write it at home, and then they have to bring it into class. And there's an issue of things being late, but everything's done handwritten, and I think, and that's just sort of because of the way the school's set up. We've just been told to do that, but we don't have to do it like that. We could do things online electronically if we wanted to, but just automatically written compositions or handwritten expected to be done at home and brought in. And I was wondering if I might have more success with them getting their writing in on time, and maybe being a bit more interested in doing it if they do it on their computers. And using, I was thinking, well, where can they do that? And you mentioned Word Online, which is something I've not explored yet. Is it free?
The Word Online, and the reason I'm hesitating, because they have Microsoft Word has kind of a lot of free components, right? They have a lot of aspects to their tools that are free and others that are not. I have a subscription, so I have a subscription that I pay for with the Microsoft Office. None of my students, though, pay, and they all, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, and if I am, feel free to correct me, or those who are watching this recording, leave a comment below. But to my knowledge, students can access Microsoft Online, presumably if they already have the software installed, if they have a license already. So I can say that all of my students used Microsoft Online. No one had a problem using it. I'm assuming they all had installed on their computer Microsoft Office, but I'm not even sure about that. So I'm not sure. It wasn't a problem from my student standpoint, and and as far as I know, it's not because I had a subscription. It's just they shared, they shared their documents online, and they went in using their browser and worked online. Now, if they have an option using Microsoft Office Online where you can choose to edit your document either through the browser online, or you can open it up on your own computer, obviously if you have Microsoft installed. So I know some students were doing both. I think most of them worked online, but some of them were choosing to download it and edit the document and then save it back online. Now, obviously, to do that, they need to have a Hotmail account. They need to have a Microsoft account. So they need to have that. But as far as I know, from the student standpoint, there's no cost involved to use the service. But again, if I'm wrong, yes, I'm sure someone will correct me. But students, that would be something that would come up, and it never came up from my students. They never had.
I don't know if you can hear me, but your screen has frozen.
So for example, if the ruler, something very easy, if using the ruler in Microsoft Office for indentations, for example, the ruler is not available in Microsoft Online. They have to actually open the document up. So there's little things like that that aren't really deal breakers for me, but they're kind of a nuisance when you get to finish a document, especially in courses, in my case, thesis seminar, where they are writing a formal document and they need some of those extra edits. But most of my students already have Microsoft installed, and so it hasn't been a problem. So I don't know and I think Microsoft is always changing their business model, but as far as I know, I don't think that's a major concern. But I think it's a good question. It's worth trying first, to experiment before you decide to use it in a course. I think it's worth kind of trying it out to see if it works.
Now, you use Google Sites to put up all these sort of material and share that with your learners. Is there an option on Google Sites for learners to submit materials?
Not in the sense of kind of a learning management environment where you would submit assignments. You could arguably say that uploading a reflection is submitting things, but I know what you're getting at. And I don't see an option to do that. But quite honestly, depending on what you want, what type of homework you want them to submit, I guess it depends. Like if you want them to submit like a Word document to you, there's not really a way to do that. I mean, I think they would just have to send it to your email. There's really not a way to do that in Google Sites that I'm aware of. Because it's Google, obviously, and I didn't go through that, but there, a lot of, basically the whole Google offering is made very much available to Google Site users. So inserting, for example, YouTube videos or Google Hangouts or integrating groups, all of those Google tools are really easily available, and you can insert those very easily in Google Sites. So if you're big on using Google Sites, certainly I think is a good option for that reason, just because it's, they offer so many different tools. So depending on what type of homework you're asking them to submit, you could kind of question or see what it means to submit something, and if you're going to have things open, and again, my approach is trying to keep as many things as transparent as possible in the classroom. I don't really ask my students to send me anything. In fact, they don't send me anything unless it's just an email inquiring about something. And if it's private in nature, obviously emails are the thing to do, not to submit things that are touchy to submit it as a reflection, for example. But yeah, it just depends on the context, and I understand that what I'm doing probably is not appropriate in a lot of contexts where, depending on, how students feel, what the culture is as far as sharing information online, and the age of the students and the maturity of the students. There are a lot of variables involved, and I'm certainly not advocating that the way I'm doing it is the way to do it. But yeah, to my knowledge, I don't think there's a way really to submit information to Google Sites. I look at Google Sites as kind of a broadcasting type of tool. It's basically saying this is information, the content for a particular class, and it's pretty much one way until you get into groups where then they can start sharing that way.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. I'm looking forward to checking it out. I've got to admit, I'd never heard of Google Sites until this Hangout. I'd never heard of OneDrive either or Wikispace, but I've made a list of them all, and I'm gonna check these out in this sort of task of exploring what technology can we use essentially in a school that has no technology. So I think this kind of either bring your own device or using stuff outside of the classroom would be the best solution. So nice, thank you for these ideas.
And to know what your your school, your teachers in your school, and you decide with regard to technology, it sounds like you're talking about it and trying to look for solutions, which I think is really half the battle. You know, when you get some, you know, educators are, I guess, less than receptive to try to do new things, but if you have a staff or faculty that try different things, that's usually half the battle. So I'd be interested to know how things work out in your context. I'm curious, in your school, do students and teachers have access to internet in terms of like broadband or Wi-Fi? And how many of your students have their own devices or bring their own? Assuming, are most of these devices cell phones, or does it also include tablets and laptops?
Right.
Or?
Well, the first thing there to say is when we sort of approach the school to say we want more technology, you know, the school is like, there's a very limited amount of money available for this. So what exactly is it you want that we can afford? And we all the teachers agreed having sufficient internet access throughout the school building would be the best step, because then everything else depends on that. So this week we've just had Wi-Fi installed in every aspect of in every part of the school on every floor. So that's been a huge improvement. With regards to what learners bring with them, they only ever bring smartphones, and that's largely to do with safety in the city of Buenos Aires. Carrying around an expensive laptop or tablet, you risk being mugged, especially if you're a young person, and especially if you're a girl, unfortunately. A grown man stands not really getting robbed, whilst a 16-year-old girl, I mean, all of my female students between the age of 14 and 17 have been mugged several times already. Yeah, it's so they're not going to carry around their laptops, but they carry around fairly cheap smartphones that can do the trick and are easily replaceable. Okay.
So that's good then. I mean, if the Wi-Fi, I agree, that's a biggie, and having that available for the students and the teachers at the time of the class, and not only having it available in class but outside of class. Presumably, I guess, do they take other courses there as well, or is this primarily just English?
No, they just come to our school for English, so it's just English courses. The other battle was the attitude of mobile phones in the school, and that's something I was sort of battling with from the very beginning of our academic year, which starts in March, and I think we've successfully changed the attitude of mobile phones. It was very much seen as like, oh, it's rude to have your mobile phone out inside the classroom, it's kind of disrespectful. And me and a couple other teachers luckily just all agree with each other that it's not, it's a part of the 21st century. When we as teachers go to meetings, you know, we're listening attentively what's being said, but I get out my phone, I tweet things about what's being said, I take pictures of stuff, you know, images that are up on the board and handouts, and tweet them and use the phone, and it's part of that learning process. But someone who's a bit skeptical about mobile technology sort of looks and thinks, what are you doing? Are you on Facebook? Are you messaging friends? You know, and I think you've got to give your learners the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point, and that goes to kind of this culture again of teachers really looking at technology in a different way, not just, you know, looking at technology as the devil, but looking for opportunities, seeing how the technologies provide opportunities. And in my classes too, a lot, you know, my students know. In fact, I typically have 15 to 20 students in my class for composition, and almost, I would say, maybe one or two students choose not to use their device. They're all bringing mostly phones. Some have tablets, and a few are using laptops. But I would say 80% are using their cell phones, and they access the content. And you know, a lot of the content, really the idea at first when I started setting up all these online spaces was to have the content available for them outside of class. But it's been really over the last year or so, I've been finding more and more opportunities and looking and appreciating the value of having all that information online, but in class, when they're actually in class, where we can, sometimes we'll just have a document and everybody will add, you know, content to whatever we're doing. So it's very much of a collaborative process right there in the moment. And I think, you know, when you have the broadband available in your school and you have the students who already have these devices, that you can also take advantage of those opportunities obviously in class as well as outside of class. I'm curious if your students also, do they have a lot of access to the internet, whether it's in their home, or I don't know if they have you know, internet on their phones just through some sort of contract, or? Yeah,
they've got pretty much permanent access to the internet, but here in Argentina, their access is like limited, so there's no 3G, and they've sort of reacted to that in an interesting way. Because things like Facebook would require a bit of a stronger internet access or use more megabytes to download information, they use a lot more things like Snapchat and WhatsApp, and it's very common for learners, be they adults or teens, to form like WhatsApp groups and Snapchat groups and stuff, and like they stay in touch with each other through that way, because those little interactions only take up a certain number of kilobytes, which they can send over a fairly weak internet signal.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Well, listen,
it's a totally different world.
It is, and you know, these are all the contextual considerations that are really important and necessary when even deciding on what technologies to use. And you know, I think look around, you know, going around the world, you're going to see so many different types of contexts, and it all depends on accessibility, price, you know, how expensive it is for individuals and in schools and things, and there's just a lot of factors involved. But it's always good to understand these differences and try to find solutions.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Anthony, it was great talking to you. I hopefully we can have this opportunity again in the future. I'm certainly interested in finding out what you guys do there in your school. Hopefully we can have, you know, additional hangouts. So if you have other teachers that you feel would like to also share and take part in the conversation, that would be great.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I've really enjoyed this. I'm gonna take it to the other teachers and see if I can get involved. So thank you very much, and yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
And if you have that, if you come across that source, that tool for embedding dialogue, that would be great if you'd share that. Appreciate that.
No problem.
All right, Anthony, It was great talking to you. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.